so to speak. We were just slaves with no principles, no moral guide and refinement. And over the 49 days, the Jewish people worked on elevating themselves and developing their character and their faculties to get to the level of being worthy of being recipients of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Today, we're on the 33rd day of that journey, of the 49-day journey to get the Torah at Mount Sinai. Now, what is so joyous about this day? Well, first of all, it comes after 32 sad days. The first 32 days of the Omer are considered sad days on the Jewish calendar. They're the days that we mourn the students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva, we're told, had 24,000 students. They died in a plague during this period, and that's why it's days of mourning, no weddings, no celebrations, no concerts. You are allowed to get engaged because the Talmud says, Jewish law says someone else may propose to the girl if you don't. So you go ahead and propose. But you cannot get married, no weddings. It's a sad time. We don't take haircuts during this time. But today is when the mourning lifts, celebrations begin, and there's a big, joyous celebration today. It began last night. It continues through this evening at Palm Beach Synagogue. We're having a big barbecue with music at the recreation center at 6 p.m. that everyone's invited to, because we're celebrating Lag BaOmer. Now, what does that mean? It means that since the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying, it became a joyous day. But that in itself wouldn't explain why it's a joyous day, because, okay, thank God they stopped dying, but would you make a party? As I mentioned this morning in my daily video, the World Health Organization announced last week that COVID is over, but nobody made a party because tragically millions of people died from COVID. So we're very happy that it's over, but we're not going to celebrate it because it was a tragedy. So the fact that the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying wouldn't be in and of itself enough reason to make a big celebration on this day. It's a happy day because the deaths of the students stop, but why would it be a joyous day? So here you need part two of the story. What's part two of the story? That there were only 5 surviving students of Rabbi Akiva. Now, a person any less stature than Rabbi Akiva would have said, I lost 3,995 students. It's all gone. It's lost. It's forever, it's forever hopeless, because how can I rebuild? I lost 99.999% of my students. I only have 5 surviving students. I give up. But not Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva took these 5 students, taught them Torah, ordained them, and said, go forth and teach Torah in Israel. We need to rebuild. And this is such a Jewish mindset. And that's really the story of the Jewish people, that despite everything, we always look at what remains and we rebuild from the ashes, just like after the Holocaust. And that's what Rabbi Akiva did. Now, one of the 5 students who survived was a rabbi by the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yokai. Now, people often refer to him as Rashbi, because Rashbi is 4 letters, Resh Shin Bet Yud, which stands for Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. He happens to be buried in northern Israel in Miron, just a few miles away from Tzfat. And as we speak, it's ending, because in Israel they're 7 hours ahead. But last night, you may have seen pictures, thousands and tens of thousands of people go to his grave and observe the holiday with a big bonfire. And you maybe seen on social media, lots of bonfires all over the world, big bonfires. What's the idea of a bonfire on Lag BaOmer? So the answer is that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, whose passing occurred on this day, it's his yahrzeit. He was the teacher of Kabbalah. The main fundamental book, foundational book of Kabbalah is Zohar. Zohar is the light of the Torah, the inner light of the Torah, the soul of the Torah, the spiritual, Kabbalistic secrets of the Torah. And he revealed these secrets. Now, when I say revealed, it's because we believe it was given to Moses at Mount Sinai. It's a part of the Torah, but he revealed it. It was usually taught from teacher to student. He revealed it to the masses. And then many years later, in the days of the Baal Shem Tov, about 250 years ago, Chassidut began, which is an extrapolation of Kabbalah, because most people can't read the Zohar. It's very, very difficult to read. Chassidut took the ideas and the passages of Zohar and defined it and articulated it and developed it so every human being, including you and I, could understand Chassidut. Many, many different streams of Chassidut, many different teachers, Hasidic masters over the years, as you know. And I, in particular, follow the teachings of Chabad Hasidism, which is one particular approach to Hasidut, but it's all based on Kabbalah, all based on Zohar. Now, what is the purpose of Kabbalah and Zohar? So when you look at the commandments, you could look at them as very mechanical or very rigid or structured, that do this, don't do that, and lots and lots of laws. But what is the essence? What is the deeper meaning of the mitzvah? What is the spiritual dimension of every mitzvah? Every mitzvah has a physical component. The tefillin has to be black boxes, this measurement, these straps, these scrolls. But what is the psychological, spiritual, emotional, deeper messages and teachings and ideas and inspiration and philosophy of what tefillin really is? Chassidut will excavate and explore those deeper hidden dimensions. So when you do the mitzvah, you don't just do it like by rote, but you do it with feeling, with deeper appreciation and emotion, and the spiritual influence of the mitzvah should permeate you, not just the physical binding of the tefillin. And that applies to every one of the mitzvot, 613. So since Zohar and then Kabbalah and then Chassidut reveals the deeper love and passion and enthusiasm of the mitzvah, the excitement of the mitzvah, the joy of the mitzvah, that's why Hasidim always emphasize the word serve God with joy. Don't just do it like a burden. Don't just do it perfunctory. Do it with feeling, with spirit. Therefore, the fire, the bonfires, represents the fire of Torah, the passion of Torah, the love of Torah, the joy of Torah. And that's really what this day is all about. A, that Rabbi Akiva's students stopped dying, but that B, these 5 students were taught by Rabbi Akiva to go forth and teach Torah. And one of them went and revealed the greatest secrets of the Torah that we still celebrate and enjoy till today. Every one of us can have access to it and appreciate it and enrich and enliven and spirit ourselves with. And therefore, it shows us, had Rabbi Akiva not dedicated himself to teaching these 5 students, we wouldn't even have Kabbalah today. We wouldn't have the Zohar. It would still be secret. So therefore, it's a day of great, tremendous joy and happiness. But to take it one step further, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yokai, in his will, so to speak, he instructed that the day of my passing should be celebrated like a wedding day. Usually on a day of passing, people mourn. But he said, no, Kibei Hilula. It should be the Yom Hilula de Rashbi. It should be the wedding celebration. And that's why people celebrate like at a wedding. Now, why would he say that my passing day should be like a wedding? So the way Kabbalah understands it is as follows, and this is a little bit of a taste of what Kabbalah is. Kabbalah explains the inner dimension of the Torah, but also the inner dimension of the human being, which is our soul. And as you know, in the 49 days of the Omer, we count 49 days, but we also look at the 7 faculties of the soul, which Kabbalah teaches: chesed, kindness; gevura, which is boundaries, discipline, restraint; tiferet, which is compassion; netzach, which is persistence; netzach hod, we're in the week of hod now, gratitude or acknowledgement; yesod, foundation, which is really the bonding and the connections and communication; and then malchus, which is leadership. And then Kabbalah explains that each of the 7 attributes and faculties of the soul is comprised of all the other 7 within them. So you have 7 times 7, which is 49. Those are the 49 days of the Omer. We work on a different attribute each and every day. So that in itself is Kabbalistic. And we'll talk a little bit about that attribute and what the attribute of today, the 33rd day of the Omer, is. But Kabbalah explains that God gave us a soul, which is the breath of life that he breathed into Adam and every human being. But Kabbalah explains that for the soul to come, it is tremendous, a tremendous pain. And to use the analogy of the Kabbalah, it says that it's me'igra rama lebira amikta. For the soul to come into the world, it's like someone going from the perch of a tall mountain all the way down to a steep, low valley. You see, the soul is on high with God and experiencing the greatest spiritual light and love and revelation in heaven. And then it's told, listen, we need you to go down into this world and be born into a body of a human baby, a child, a human being. And for the soul, it's like going into prison. Imagine, God forbid, how painful it is for a person in freedom to go into prison. Well, the soul is now trapped in this body, and it's confined, and it's limited to the physical experiences. Now, the soul was sent into the body to enliven it and to give it spiritual perspective, to be the light of the body, and to the the vision of a person, and the spiritual aspirations and idealism. But for the soul, it's a painful experience. It'd rather be in heaven where it could experience all the spiritual delight together with the angels. But why does the soul do it? Because it has a mission to help the body fulfill its destiny and purpose in this world. So according to Kabbalah, we talk about marriage. A husband and a wife, a man and a woman, different opposites come together. Well, the first marriage we all experience in life is the minute we're born. That's a marriage. It's a marriage between this particular soul and this particular body. This soul has its attributes and strengths. This body, when I say body, I don't just mean the flesh. I mean the person's intelligence and other skills and talents, and they're married together. And just like a marriage, what's the purpose? To elevate each other, to strengthen each other. There's a mutual benefit. And this is what Kabbalah explains. It's not just that the body benefits from the soul, but the soul benefits from the body. How does the soul benefit from the body? The way the soul benefits from the body is that the soul is able to fulfill its mission, which is to elevate the body and the world around them through the body. So it actually says that it's like a catch-22. The soul is happier in heaven. It doesn't want to come down into the body. But once it comes down into the body and experiences what it could achieve through the body, all the mitzvot that they could do in a physical, tangible world, when the soul returns to heaven, the Yiddish word is bengsich. Bengsich is it longs for the days when it was in the body. Because in heaven, you can't do any mitzvot. You can't feed a poor person. You can't comfort a sad person. You can't visit a sick person in the hospital. You can't go to make a bride and a groom happy at a wedding. In the heavens, there is none of that, because heaven is this perfect, ideal place where everything's wonderful, but there's no need to do any good deeds. In this world, we could do physical actions and elevate and transform the world around us. And it says that when the soul goes to heaven, it says, wow, I miss a world where for a few dollars, I could buy a pair of tzitzis, I could buy a tefillin, I could buy kosher food, I could do all these mitzvot. In heaven, you don't have these opportunities. So it's a marriage between a body and a soul. And that's why he said, the day of my passing should be celebrated like a wedding, because the days that I lived was like the marriage of my body and my soul, and the deeper perspective on life. And this just shows you one of the ways Kabbalah views life. Think about your life as a marriage between a body and a soul. Now, we all know in a marriage, sometimes there could be different interests between the husband and a wife, and they have to work together and complement each other and contribute to each other's fulfillment of dreams and realizations. And the same thing, the body and the soul. Body and soul have different desires, different interests, but they work in harmony. So you take Shabbat. Shabbat is a day of spiritual elevation, but we don't negate the body. We don't suppress the bodily needs or reject it. On the contrary, we feed the body delicious food and a nice cup of wine and a l'chaim and the best of everything. Why? Because we want to infuse the body with the soul experience. We want to elevate the body as well. So this is the idea of Lag BaOmer, the day of Rabbi Akiva and the day of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yokai, his student. And a very powerful lesson that never give up hope, even if, God forbid, Rabbi Akiva lost 3,995 students, he still focused not on what he lost, but on what he had. He said, I still have 5 students, I'm going to teach them Torah. And thanks to that dedication and that perspective, one of those 5 students contributed the Zohar, which is monumental and inspires Jews till this day. And I'll just take this as a public service announcement, PSA. If you're not learning Chassidut, I don't expect anyone to learn Kabbalah. I don't learn Kabbalah either. In my house, I don't have a set of Zohar and I don't study it. There are Kabbalists who study Kabbalah, but most people don't. But everyone could learn Chassidut. We have Tanya classes at the synagogue, which is the foundational book of the Alter Rebbe, but there's lots of different Hasidic, and I'm sure you've heard beautiful teachings from Hasidic masters. It's a wealth of not just knowledge, but inspiration. And it helps us tap in, the best psychology lesson you want is in Hasidut, because it really understands the nature of the soul. And we gave out in the Pesach packages, if you recall, the 49 counts with the daily meditation. What is today? Today is Hod Shebahod. Now, I said Hod is gratitude. So gratitude of gratitude. Sometimes you're grateful for an ulterior motive, or you're grateful for something specific, because of some particular benefit. Gratitude of gratitude means gratitude for the sake of being grateful, just for the sake of being grateful. It's not even about what you're grateful for. It's just that you should be a grateful person. And we all know in Judaism, we've talked about this many times, we begin the day with Modani. The first words every day is words of gratitude. And we are called Yehudim after the tribe of Judah, because Yehuda means to be grateful. So it's all about gratitude in Judaism, no question about that. And Hod Shebahod, which is a Hod within Hod, gratitude within God. This is the ultimate trait, and that's the trait of this day of Lag BaOmer. And it fits very well into Rabbi Akiva, because Rabbi Akiva said, I'm not going to cry over what I don't have. Of course, he cried over his student, but I'm not going to become paralyzed with grief and depression and surrender. On the contrary, I'm going to look at what I do have. I'm going to be grateful that I have 5 surviving students, and I'm going to teach them Torah, make them into rabbis, and have them go forth and teach Torah. But the word Hod means gratitude, but also means acknowledgement, recognition. Now, the two go together, because when I'm grateful to you, what am I doing? I'm acknowledging what you have done for me. So when I say, thank you, God, for my health, for my family, for my life, for my livelihood, I'm acknowledging that God is the one giving this to me, and I'm grateful to him. So gratitude is a form of acknowledgement. Some people have trouble saying thank you to other people. Why? Because I have to acknowledge your existence. And not only acknowledge your existence, I have acknowledged that you contributed to my existence, that I didn't do it myself. There's some people, they think it's just about me. All they can see is their own ego. To give thanks and to be grateful is to admit. The word hodaos means admittance or acknowledgement that someone else contributed and gave you what you have, that it's not your own doing. Honor your father and mother. That's acknowledging that you're not a self-made man. Your parents set you up for the blessings and the success in your life. It's all about gratitude, which is one and the same with acknowledgement. But just to talk about this idea of acknowledgement and how fundamental and essential it is to human relationships. Acknowledgement means to recognize and to appreciate and to validate someone else's existence. That not to see other people as either an extension of you or a threat to you, but acknowledge that this other person with another viewpoint and another perspective and another, character, nature, and I have to acknowledge that I may be who I am, but they are who they are. And acknowledgement for the sake of acknowledgement, to really appreciate diversity and differences, and that there are other people besides myself in this world. And it may sound very simple. Of course, we have to acknowledge that, but it's not so simple. There are some people who it's only about them and what they want, and they can't see someone else's perspective. And this idea of hod shebahod is the ultimate degree of acknowledgement and gratitude. So this is a little bit of a flavor of what the day of Lag BaOmer is all about, the day we're celebrating today. And just that you know, because Rabbi Shimon bar Yokai was a great mystic, it's a day associated with miracles. Because, Kabbalists have powers, they can perform miracles. And one of the reasons people go to Rabbi Shimon bar Yokai is to pray for miracles in their lives. And even when I grew up in Crown Heights, it was known that Lag BaOmer was a special day that people wanted to get a blessing from the Rebbe. When the Rebbe would arrive to the synagogue, from his home to 770 to his office in the synagogue on the day of Lag BaOmer, there would be a line of women waiting to greet the Rebbe, and they would ask the Rebbe for blessings for children. And it was a special day for blessings for children because there's a lot of spiritual powers in this day. And so if you celebrate the life of Rabbi Shimon bar Yokai, either by learning about him right now, honoring his memory and his teachings, or by coming to the Lag BaOmer celebration today, or going to any Lag BaOmer celebration, in the merit of that, may God grant us great blessings. And the merit of the great Tana, he was a Talmudic sage, quoted throughout the Talmud, may his merit be upon all of us, individually, collectively, our families, our nation, Israel, protecting Israel, especially with what's going on as we speak. So this is just to know that this day is also unique for miracles and wondrous events. And that's one of the reasons it's so widely celebrated, because it has the special Kabbalistic power and energy of Rabbi Shimon bar Yokai. One more thing is that today at our Lag BaOmer celebration, there's a 3-year-old boy who's going to be getting his upshernish. Now, maybe you're familiar with upshernish. It means a haircut. Upshern means a haircut in Yiddish. And what it's all about is that there's a custom amongst many that a boy's first haircut is given at the age of 3 years old. Why 3 years old? Because there's a law in the Torah that in Israel, you shouldn't eat the fruit of a tree for the first 3 years. So it says man is like a tree in the field. And therefore, we wait for 3 years, okay? So we wait 3 years and we cut the fruit. But the first 3 are devoted to God. The same thing with the child. We begin with 3 years not cutting the hair. Symbolically, man is like a tree in the field. And then we cut the hair and we leave the peyot, which is give the boy a kippah and tzitzis and teach him about the beginning of performing mitzvot. It's the 10-year preparation for the bar mitzvah. So being that for the first 32 days of Lag BaOmer, of the Omer, we don't take haircuts because it's a sad period, all the boys that need haircuts get it on Lag BaOmer, the ones who haven't gotten it for the past 4.5 weeks, who turned 3. And we happen to have a boy in our community who's going to be getting his haircut at the Lag BaOmer celebration today that we're having at the recreation center. But just that you know, at Miron, which is the burial place of Rabbi Shimon bar Yokai, there's hundreds and hundreds of fathers who bring their boys to get their first haircut with their mothers, and so on and so forth. So that's just another interesting aspect of the Lag BaOmer celebrations. Okay. Before I continue to the parsha, just that I know everyone's participating. Does anyone have a question about Lag BaOmer? If you want to type it in, I would love to address any questions about this very joyous day of Lag BaOmer. As you think of whether or not you have a question, I'll just add one other very beautiful idea. And I left out this idea, so I just want to add it. It says, why did the students of Rabbi Akiva die? What happened? So there was a plague, but why? Why did God allow a plague? And the Talmud says, "Mipnei shelo nagu kavod zeh b'zeh." They didn't treat each other with the proper honor and respect, as befitting for the students of Rabbi Akiva. So one of the important lessons we try to inculcate: do we light candles? That's an excellent question. The answer is many do. In memory of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yokai. There's no Shabbat candles. It's not like we're going to make a kiddush or have challah, but many people light a candle in memory. Like when you have a yard site, you light a candle. So especially in Miron, but even in your own home, if you have a candle, you say, I'm lighting this candle in the merit of the soul of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yokai. May his light be upon me. It's a beautiful thing. As a matter of fact, I didn't do it yet, but I'm going to go do it after the class, because who doesn't want the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yokai upon themselves? So if you have a yard site candle, or any candle, light it in his memory. But going back to Lag BaOmer, it says the students of Akiva didn't treat each other with proper respect. That's why Rabbi Akiva taught, love your neighbor as yourself is the most important principle of the Torah. So when you look at the word, remember I told you everything has numerical values. It says in Pirkei Avot, the most important trait and attribute that a person could have is a leiv tov, a good heart. If you take the word leiv, it's one before lag. It's lamed and beis, 30 and 2, 32. If you take the word tov, it's tes vav veis, it's 9, 6, and 2 is 17. Leiv tov is 32 plus 17, which equals 49. So Lag BaOmer, everyone has a heart, but not everyone has a good heart. Today we come to the last 17 days of the Omer, which means we're in the tov part. And the idea is Lag BaOmer teaches us as well that we have to learn from the students of Rabbi Akiva to have a leiv tov, a good heart, to be a kind, loving, compassionate person. And as it says in Pirkei Avot, that's the most important trait that is inclusive and encapsulates all the other good qualities that a person can have. Because in Pirkei Avot, it says, what's the best trait? One person says a good friend, a good neighbor, a good eye, someone who could see the future, see the consequences of your actions, different opinions. But then one rabbi says, good heart. And he says, why? Is that the right answer the teacher said? Because that includes all the other good qualities. If you have a good heart, every other good quality comes with that. Speaking about the 49 days of the Omer is a beautiful segue, pivot into this week's first Torah portion, which is Behar. Behar literally means the mountain. Which mountain? Mount Sinai. Right? Daber Hashem Moshe. God spoke to Moses at Mount Sinai, saying. So it's about the holiday of Shavuos, not the holiday, but what we received at Mount Sinai. And the opening law is the laws of the sabbatical and jubilee years. The Torah says that we should count 6 years, and the 7th year should be the sabbatical year. The land shall lie fallow, just like the 7 days a day of rest. The 7th year is a year of rest. Until today, people take sabbaticals. But then the Torah takes it a step further and says, count 7 cycles of 7 years, 7 shmitot, and you'll get to the last, after 49 years, you'll get to the lag, you'll get to the, you will get to the holiday of the Yovel, the Jubilee year. And we all know on the Liberty Bell, it says proclaim freedom throughout the land for all its inhabitants, which is lifted, which is placed on the Liberty Bell, but it's a direct quote from this week's Torah portion. Why was it a year of freedom? Because all the land returned to the original owners. It was like a long-term lease that you had to give back the land to the original owners so they don't fall into poverty. It was also the year that all the slaves were emancipated. They blew the shofar and everyone went free. So talking about 49 days of Omer, we also have the 49 years, which is 7 cycles. So you see the number 7 is a very special number, and 7 cycles of 7 until you get to the Yovel, the Jubilee year, which is known as the year of freedom, emancipation, and that's the opening subject of this week's Torah portion. Now, what is the message behind, we don't have the sabbatical, we do have the Shemitah in Israel, not in the diaspora, and we don't have the Jubilee year today because we don't have land that's on a 49-year lease, and we don't have slaves or servants anymore like in biblical times. So what is the message of the sabbatical year? So the Torah says very clearly, the Torah says, what do you mean give back the land in the 50th year? Why should I give back my land? I bought it. It's mine. Why am I returning it to the owner? Now, granted, you bought it on a long-term lease. So if you bought a piece of land 20 years before the Yovel, you paid less than if you bought it 30 years before, because you knew you're going to have to return it. But here's what the Torah says. Four very important words. God says you should give it back in the 50th year. Why? Ki li kol haaretz. The whole world belongs to me, God says. And therefore, I'm commanding you to return it. It's not yours. It's mine. You had it for a period of time. Now you have to return it. And here we come to something very, very fundamental. This is, again, a mind shift. Like just this idea could be a whole change of perspective on your whole life. This one idea of the Jubilee year. And that is, when you look at your possessions, your material possessions, you could either think of yourself as the owner of these possessions, which is what most people think. I'm the owner. I own it. Or you could see it as that you are a guardian of it, meaning everything belongs to God, but God entrusted you with these and these material possessions or these and these material resources, and you are not the owner of it. You are merely the guardian of it. Now, Torah says we don't own anything, and that's what God says. The earth is mine. The land is mine. The world is mine. You are mine. I created you as well. So nothing belongs to you in terms of ownership. You are the guardian. Now, what's the difference? A world of a difference. The difference is obviously that when you own something, you could do with it as you wish. When you're the guardian of something, you have to follow the rules of guardianship. And whatever the guardianship rules are, you have to obey them, because that's not your possessions to do with as you wish. So what are the rules of guardianship? There's a lot of rules. You have to give charity. You have to share the corners of your field with the poor. There's a lot of laws of what God wants us to do with the possessions he gave us, how to utilize them, how to share your blessings, on and on and on. And in this case, in the 50th year, give it back to others and give it back to the original owners. And we could talk about this for a while, but, when a baby's born, the baby has their hands clenched. When the person dies, their hands always open up. And the reason is because when you come into this world, you want to grab, you want to amass, you want to collect, you want to, so-and-so had a bumper sticker once I saw that says, life is a game. Whoever dies with the most toys is the winner, right? I bought a boat, I bought a car, I bought this, I bought that. I'm always shopping and buying and collecting and growing another house, another car, right? And then what happens? You leave it all behind. You can't take it with you. So the winner is not the person who collected the most toys or the most possessions, but rather the message is that if God blessed you with material resources, it's guardianship. So if you have a house, that's a beautiful thing God gave you, but it's not your house. You're the guardian of this house. So therefore, the Torah says, invite guests into your house. A person needs a place to eat. The person needs a place to sleep, right? If you have money and someone needs a loan, you should loan it to them. But it's not yours. Don't feel like you're giving up something that's yours. You're just doing what the guardianship instructions are to do with these possessions. So it's just a much more generous. It leads to more generosity. It leads to more happiness. It makes life so much better. You don't become attached to your material things. You realize that's the idea of a sabbatical year and a jubilee year. Spend the year on more spiritual pursuits. Don't just work. Realize possessions are just possessions. They're just material things that you're a guardian of. And therefore, there's more important aspects to life than just the material, physical pursuits. But we have to have a spiritual vision and purpose to our lives. And it's about family, it's about community, it's about relationships, it's about God, it's about Torah, it's about friendships. That's what life is really all about. If money is overrated in our society. we take money way too seriously in our society. All the shows on the TV about the stocks and the investments, people talk about it all day. Money is just a means to an end. To survive in this world, you need money to live. So you got to work to make a living, but you're not living to work. You're working to live. What does live mean? Live means to have happiness, to have spirituality, to have meaning, to have purpose in your life. And that's why the whole metaphor of a golden calf is where you worship money. Every dollar bill, every coin says, in God we trust. Don't put your trust in money. Money's going to disappoint you if you put your trust in it. If you think money's going to make you happy, you're in for a rude awakening. You're in for a big disappointment. There's no correlation between how much money you have and happiness. Of course, a lack of sufficient money will make you unhappy, but it's about being content. It's about happy with your lot, to be content. And real happiness comes from meaning and fulfillment and purpose and love and relationships. And therefore, don't put your stock in money thinking that's going to make you're just going to set yourself up for heartache and disappointment, because when you achieve that money, you're going to realize it doesn't make you any happier, because money can never, all the money in the world cannot give your life meaning and purpose. And therefore, don't let your possessions possess you. So many problems in life come because people become so wrapped up in money, and they put money before what really matters, before relationships between families. I mean, you and I know, I don't have to tell you, as a rabbi, maybe I see a little bit more of it than I wish I did. How many families are torn apart over money? How many siblings don't talk to each other about fights over inheritances, right? And I often look and I say, boy, I knew these parents, if they knew that their hard-earned money would cause their children not to talk to each other, they would have said, I'm not going to make the money in the first place. This is what I killed myself my whole life to earn money. So now my kids won't talk to each other because they're fighting over whatever amount of money they're fighting over. And the whole thing doesn't make sense, really. Because a lot of times when I see these situations, sadly, it's not like anyone's poor. Both siblings have tons of money. Parents left enough for everyone, so to speak. But because of greed, I want a little bit more, and the one feels they didn't get what they would deserve. So even though I have plenty, thank God, I'm not poor, but I'm not going to talk to my sibling, and I'm upset at this one and that one. And sometimes they're upset at the parents, and it's just a disaster. So let's not get too fixated on money. And that's the idea of the sabbatical year. Remember not just every seventh day what's important, but every seventh year, take a year to remember, and especially the Jubilee year, and be able to relinquish it. I'll just tell you one last thought on this. You know the famous story of King Solomon with the mothers fighting over the babies. And what happened? He said, bring a sword. And he said, we're going to cut the baby in half and give you each half. And then one mother says, no, don't cut the baby in half. And King Solomon says, you're the real mother. So the idea is that the person who's willing to give something up is the real owner of it. How do you know if you really own what you have? If you're able to give it up, if you're willing to relinquish it. If the Jubilee, you could give it back, that means you owned it with a proof that you could give it away. But if it owns you, if it possessed you, if it controlled you, then they weren't your possessions. You were being possessed by it. A person who is controlled and their life is dictated by material things or by money, money possesses them. They're possessed by the money. If you don't know how to give charity, if you don't know how to share your blessings, if you don't know how to be generous, that means you're not in control of the money. The money is in control of you. So it's a very, very profound and important lesson, our relationship with earthly material things. Just to tell you a little story, there was two Jews fighting over a piece of land. They came to the rabbi. They were having a real heated dispute, real terrible feelings. And the rabbi did something interesting. He said, you know what? You guys are fighting over who owns the land. Reuven and Shimon, two Jews. The rabbi said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask the land who it belongs to and get the answer. And the rabbi lays down on the floor, and the rabbi says, land, earth, tell me who owns you. Are you owned by Reuven or by Shimon? And then the rabbi presses his ear against the floor to hear the answer. The two Jews look at the rabbi like he's off his mind. He's asking, he's lost his marbles. He's asking the land who owns it. The rabbi gets up, he dusts himself up. He said, I got my answer. said, really? The land answered you? He said, yeah. She said, so who did the land say owns it? Me or him? The rabbi says, the land, the earth, the field, said, none of you own it, but rather that land says it owns both of you, because eventually both of you will be buried inside of it. What the rabbi was trying to do is sober them up and make them realize, life is short. We only have a limited amount of time. You can't take any of this with you. So is it worth fighting over it? Is it worth making enemies over this? So this is some of the year. And that's why it says proclaim freedom throughout the land for all its inhabitants. All its inhabitants? I understand that people get the land back. But what about the person who lets go of the land? Or the servant who gets his freedom is free. But how is the master who gave up his servants free? And the answer is, if you have to control someone else, you're not free. Only when you can let go, that shows you're truly a free person. So that is the open subject of this week's Torah portion. Part of it talks about redeeming somebody who was brought into servitude. And if the family member comes and gets money, they could redeem the person, because God doesn't want any person to be in servitude. But if a person was sold because they didn't have money and they sold themselves into servitude because they can't afford to provide for themselves, or if they stole money and they had to pay back, so they were sold, they could redeem themselves. A great deal of this Torah portion, Behar, deals with the poor, the needy, how to overcome poverty in society, how to care for those less fortunate, various institutions and various provisions made to have the distribution, so to speak, of wealth, to make sure that it reaches those who are needy. Judaism does believe in capitalism. People could earn as much as they want, but they also have a responsibility to take care of the poor and the needy. And there are many different institutions that were, enacted in the Torah to make sure that the poor and the needy are provided for. Just to give you one other example from this week's Torah portion, besides the sabbatical and the Jubilee year and the redeeming of people from slavery, the Torah says something very, very interesting. The Torah says, if your brother becomes impoverished and his means falter in your proximity, you shall strengthen him. Now, it sounds like the mitzvah of charity. A guy fell in hard times in your midst, strengthen him. But why doesn't you say give him tzedakah? It doesn't say give him tzedakah. It says strengthen him. Rabbis learned something very, very interesting here. Rabbis learned that we're not talking about a person who's poor. That goes without saying. It's a mitzvah of charity. We have that in the Torah. What it's saying is something else. A person who his business, his income is starting to falter, meaning that his business is starting to decline. He didn't fall yet. He's falling. He's faltering. And therefore the Torah says, don't wait for him to become poor and then give him charity. Give him a boost. Strengthen him. The Torah doesn't say give him charity. It says strengthen him. Reinforce him so that he doesn't collapse, that he doesn't fall into poverty. So here's the parable that the Talmud gives. Talmud says that when a donkey collapses on the floor, it takes 5 people to lift the donkey back up. Imagine a donkey carrying a load and it falls over. It takes 5 people to put the person back up. However, what happens when the donkey starts wobbling? It starts faltering. One person can put their hands up and stabilize it. And that's what the rabbis are telling us. The Torah is saying is once a person falls into poverty, it takes 5 times more effort and resources to reestablish that person. But if a person starts having difficult times, right? Think about a person's businesses, having a hard time. They're going to foreclose on his house. A little loan or something like that could help them get over the hump and do well. But once their business falls and they have to go out of business and they lose their house and now they're poor, you need at least 5 times as much to get them back on their feet again. So therefore, the Torah is basically saying the following. And by the way, this is not just about money. It's about every aspect of life. We see a person's going through a struggle. They need a little friendship. They need a little companionship. They need a little encouragement. They need a little inspiration, a little support. That could save them, as opposed to, no, they falter. And then God knows what happens. They fall into depression. They turn to drugs. And they, God forbid, even worse, right? And then to get them out of that, you have to send them to rehab, and it's 10 times more difficult. So what it's basically saying is preventive medicine. Everyone knows when somebody's poor, they come for help. But being able to notice somebody's faltering, that's why one of the biggest mitzvahs is to give somebody a loan for charity. Not to give them charity, but to give them a loan, interest-free, so that they could save themselves before it's too late. There's an old story I like to tell about this guy who comes to the doctor. He says he has a cold. He's coughing. He's sneezing. Doctor checks him out and says, "Listen, it's just a little cold. Just get some bed rest. Take some vitamin C. You'll be okay." But he's a real nudnik. He says, "No, Rabbi. I'm sorry." He says, "Doctor, please, give me a subscribe something. Prescribe something. Is there a medication I can take to get better?" The doctor says, "Listen, I told you it's not a big deal. Hot tea, lemon, honey, orange juice, lay in bed. You'll be fine. There's nothing you can give me a prescription." So the doctor, "Okay, I'll tell you what to do. Go home and take a cold shower. And then when you come out of the shower dripping wet, don't use a towel. Go stand right in front of your air conditioner for 10 minutes. He says, "Doctor, you're crazy. I'll catch pneumonia." Doctor says, "Yeah, but for pneumonia, I could give you a prescription." And the metaphor, obviously, is that there's certain things that just need a little help, a little intervention, a little strengthening. A student isn't doing well in school. A little extra tutoring on the side could send them off on a beautiful, successful life. But if nobody addresses that in 2nd grade, then he goes to 3rd grade and 4th grade, and he falls behind further. Then he becomes a dropout in high school, but he ends up turning to bad things because he has nothing good and productive in his life, and he becomes a big failure and a burden to society forever. As opposed to a little tutoring in 2nd grade could have gotten him over the hump, and he could have been a very productive, wonderful citizen. So that's what the Torah is saying. Don't just give charity once it's too late. Try to step in and make a difference and be like that person who holds up the donkey before it actually collapses and it's too late. We only have about 5 minutes. I just want to touch upon briefly the last Torah portion. It's not a very easy Torah portion. It's a difficult one because it talks about the blessings and the curses. The blessings for living a life of Torah-based life, meaning heeding the commandments and the observances and the mitzvot, and you'll have all the blessings, meaning your good deeds will result in good outcomes for you and your family. But God forbid, if you don't listen to me, God says, it's like a parent saying to a child, "Do what I ask you to do, everything will work out well." But if not, all these terrible things are going to befall you. And the Torah predicts some of the worst tragedies that are going to befall the Jewish people. And in hindsight, we see that, unfortunately, they've all come true. But it does end with a glimmer of light where God says, "But despite everything that you will experience as a Jewish people, I will never, although you'll experience exile and persecution, you will never be completely forgotten or abandoned. I will always remember you because of the covenant I had with your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and I will bring you back to the land of Israel." And that's, again, something remarkable, that despite everything, when you read this week's Parsha, you could read literally the prediction of the Holocaust. But, as God said, I will bring you back, and everything at the end, you'll come back to the land of Israel, something that we've seen in our generation. It's interesting that this week is May 15th week. Today's the 9th, so that means later in this week will be May 15th, which is the English date of the establishment of Israel. But the Torah really says, "I will bring you back. I'll remember the land of Israel." what God said. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the land of Israel, and bring you back. And the Torah reiterates this promise multiple times. We find it later in the book of Devarim. If your outcasts will be dispersed at the end of the earth, from there I will gather you in and bring you in. And with this, we'll rise to our feet and say, Chazak, Chazak, B'nis Chazek. Let us be strong. Let us strengthen ourselves and recommit ourselves to the study of Torah. So look forward to seeing everyone on Shabbat when we finish the third book of the Torah. But we also look forward to seeing everyone tonight at 6 o'clock at the Recreation Center in Palm Beach as we celebrate Lag BaOmer, this very, very joyous day. And if you're not in Palm Beach, thank you, Gloria. If you're not in Palm Beach, wherever you are, try to find a local celebration. And I'm going to go downstairs now, thanks to Nancy's suggestion, light a candle for the memory of Rabbi Shimon and Bar Yokai, and may his merit be upon all of us that study about his Torah today and that will celebrate his life. And we should all see miraculous divine salvation and blessings and intervention in whatever areas of life we are seeking God's blessings. But most importantly and most practically is to learn Chassidut. Today it's on the internet, it's everywhere. You could just type in the word Tanya and you'll find hundreds of classes, audio, video, written. There are books, and infuse your life with the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yokai and his teachings, which is accessible and available to each and every one of us today like never before. So wish everyone a wonderful day, and I hope I'll see you later this evening. Have a good day. Thank you all for joining. Bye.